You know what's heartbreaking, Randil, is the fact that we have some of the most genius brains in the technological industry sitting here making the world a better place, except Sri Lanka, because the opportunity is obviously not given to them. And that is, I mean, from the individuals that we've actually spoken on the series, some of the amazing tech brains are here, but their value is actually added into another country. And those countries obviously are becoming global platforms.
Yeah.
Now, you did speak about, for example, when you wake up in the morning, you obviously are into a social media platform, either Facebook or Instagram or Spotify or whatever, and also you've accepted the fact that your market is trying to put you right up there, is expecting you to put right up there, right? Now the question, of course, is the fact that how can Sri Lanka banks compete with technological advances that is actually up there in the global platform? What do they have to do?
So I think one thing that we need to look at is to look at customer centric banking.
Right.
So I think that is a big concept, which is normally what we do. If for a digital is that you have a big technology, you understand some feature, you go and do what you want. Whether the customer likes it or not, you go and launch something saying, oh, we are first in the country and all sorts of stuff. But I think mainly we have to be customer centric in terms of what the customer wants.
Right.
And also, I think one other thing is that we have a lot of customer requirements as well as customer transactions that we have digitized already. Example, real-time fund transfer in Sri Lanka is less than is milliseconds.
That's right.
Right. Some of the other countries, it's not even existing.
Right.
So I think so we've got that. We've used those technologies to come here. So I think, but the bank's point of view, we have to ensure that we continue to drive the real use cases for our customers.
Right.
In their own way. Example, we can't drive saying, okay, you do this is what it is. Example, going forward, customers are not going to come into my platform to do banking.
Yeah.
They want to do banking in their own platform.
Right.
Example, some people will say, I want this platform, I have an overseas platform that I want to connect. We have to be able to connect to those ecosystems, right? Otherwise, customers won't change, to come into one platform and do a fund transfer and go to another platform to do overseas transfer.
True.
Right.
True.
I think the newest concept, which is called share of life.
Right.
Your share of life from a social media platform and things like that is very high, probably about 18, 15, some sort of that. But I think from a banking point of view, you logging into a banking application to do a specific transaction, your share of life is very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why these smart apps as well as super apps sort of concepts are there, because to increase the share of life, when you get into an application, you give all other services within that application. Right. So I think it's a matter of all of us have limited amount of time that you want to use. I think most of the time that we spend on the phone.
Right.
So everybody is competing for your
share of life.
The share of life.
That's right.
So I think that is what we need to understand from a banker's point of view, and integrate banking into the day-to-day ecosystems of the customers. Yeah. So I think that is something that all the banks have to strive to.
Now, also, when you look at technological advances, and this is something that we also spoke extensively with all our guests on the show today, with digital transactions, obviously, I mean, from a banking point of view, trying to push digital banking, one of the go-tos is to ensure the fact that your digital transactions increase. That's pretty much it, right? But also at the same time, whilst that increases, educating your customers on cybersecurity is also very, very important, which I feel Sri Lanka, still being a very traditionally driven nation, we feel that online transactions is still not safe. And that, I believe, in my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the pushback for maybe the older generation to start doing transactions digitally.
So I think, yes, that might be a point.
Right.
But I think overall, anyway, globally on cybersecurity, most people don't know what they want on cybersecurity.
That is also very true.
Right. So
It's another word.
exactly. So so they will so they will want the same convenience like Facebook or something like that on a banking application, for example. But they wouldn't know the risks involved in that, right? So I think the challenge has always been from a financial service provider point of view is that to predict what sort of cybersecurity threats that will happen to the consumer while delivering the same sort of convenience. How do we mitigate that in multiple layers?
Right.
Right. So, so that is also very, very important when we look at cybersecurity, right? And from a from different institutions' point of view, and example telcos like Hutch and all those people also help to do some of that.
Right.
But as you said, customers' education is also important because no point in having any of the world-class platforms if your customer doesn't grow with you.
Right.
So educating the customers on cybersecurity is also very important, so that when you drive digital banking upwards, customers also will embrace that without any fear, right? So I think it's no secret, so I don't mind talking about it. These few days there was a lot of cyber security threats in the country, predominantly on the financial transaction.
Yes.
And I'm sure all of you would have seen over 300 people were caught.
Yeah.
And I think so some of those instances, people have lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. So so we have to ensure that the unforeseen threats are seen by the financial institutions to block it.
Right.
Plus also educate a lot of customers. Regulator also has taken a lot of steps to do that. They've launched a big campaign starting previous month.
Right.
And I'm sure that they will do, as well as with all the financial institutions together, we'll do a lot of stuff in the coming months as well.
So how will, for example, how do you see like AI and predictive analytics being used by financial institutions to curb cyber security?
Yeah. So I think that's a important aspect because when these guys asked recently saying that who is attacking, what are the fraudsters doing right?
Right.
So fraudsters are doing right is they are using AI.
Yeah.
Right? Properly. Right. And so what I told is that we are trying to counter AI with a A4. Right? Because we are sticking to a process which is archaic, just to do rule-based monitoring, things like that, which doesn't work in the future.
Yeah.
So I think it is 100% important and a mandatory thing to go into models to understand customer behavior, as well as use AI to detect fraud.
Right.
So it's going to be one of the most important things with the growth of digital banking to implement platforms like that.
Again, the other thing, of course, is the fact that in general, I'm just saying, in general, in the last several years, we've had many governments coming in and going out. Everybody's talking about digital transformation. Everybody's saying that we need to take Sri Lanka to a place where the world recognizes us digitally. You tell us right now that we are ready to basically, switch the button if they say, yes, we can do it. What is holding us back? I mean, where is the pushback?
So I think for any successful digital ecosystem or digital financial ecosystem, there's a part for everybody to play.
Right.
There's a part for the regulator, there's a part for the government, there's a part for the institutions, there's a part for the merchants and that sort of segments, as well as the people.
Right.
So for this to be successful, the regulator as well as the government also has to support this whole process, because I think it's in their interest that the country goes digital, because if it goes digital and if it works fine, Sri Lanka will have a lot of benefit
for sure
doing that. And one important aspect that I have seen working with different institutions and different bodies is that one is a lack of knowledge about digital and fear of digital as well. right? So I think most of us, we'll do our part and say, hey, nothing is happening. So I think we've changed our stance a little bit, and we've tried to educate most of the people in those institutions,
Right.
to ensure that they support the whole digital process, happening in the country. So some things have worked, some things have not.
Right.
But I think futuristically we are hopeful that all these components and all these pillars will come together,
Right.
because we have to go digital.
Yeah.
There is no other choice
Yeah.
than going digital in Sri Lanka. If we are, because I'm sure you are here in this country and you want to do something. I am here in this country. I want to do something, and all of us who are here and trying to do something. There is no other way to than going digital.
Exactly. I mean, you really don't want to be left behind. And like I said, I mean, it's great to basically throw words in public and saying this is what we're going to be, but again, your ecosystem, like you said, has to be basically sorted out. Your infrastructure has to be sorted out, and like I said, it's very lopsided. I mean, we feel that people are talking high about digital, but then why can't we actually take it there? Now, you've been in the digital banking industry for a long time, and you of course see the trends coming in and out. Do you see something exciting on the horizon for digital banking in Sri Lanka, apart from what we actually spoke about?
Right. Yes, I think there are few things which is happening right now. From a country point of view.
Okay.
And certain projects happening now, which excites me personally, because some of those use cases, when that goes live, I'm pretty certain that Sri Lanka will get that jump in terms of digitizing, right? Then also, I think recently we had a meeting at CBSL, and after the meeting we were having a casual chat, and somebody was saying, why don't we ban the...
That's where the best ideas come about, at the casual chats.
Why don't we propose that we ban or below 500 the note, we just stop it.
Right.
What happens, problem is if we stop 5,000 above, why don't we ban the 500 below, right? It was obviously a joke, but I think that's something which triggered all our minds to say, why won't we scrap all the small notes and say, okay, below 500 transactions are only digital. I think so some of that, hopefully we can propose it, but I think that those are some of the key changes, how the small things like that will significantly augment the digital ecosystem or the payments ecosystem in the country.
So what you're saying is, from what I've gathered with our chat that we've had, we have the ecosystem. We need an ecosystem to work collectively. We have the infrastructure. If the regulators say, okay, good, you can good to go, you just have to click the switch and we're good to go, right? But you still feel there has to be something drastic to change for people to adapt, like what you just suggested. What somebody suggested, basically, taking away transactions below 500, something drastic that really needs to trigger.
Yeah, so I think the best example, excuse me, the best example is when we ran out of fuel.
Right.
We ran out of fuel. It was a crisis.
Yeah.
And the government said, except if not for QR, you can't pump fuel.
Yeah.
So even the person who has never heard of QR, adapted to QR, right? That was rapid digitalization.
Right.
Right. So, and I think Sri Lanka has suffered too much until now not to have a rapid growth. Right? We can have a step-by-step growth for the next 10 years, 12 years, won't make a significant difference.
We'll still be behind the
Exactly.
rest of the world.
So I think Sri Lanka needs some push like that. I'm not saying, complete change like that, but at least some push like that. Either some large use cases to go live, or else some drastic change as well, which will give us that time to catch up,
right,
and ensure that we go up there.
Right. Okay. But do we have when things like that, for example, like you mentioned the QR code, we didn't have a fallback because we were already fallen at that point, right?
Yeah.
But when we need to trigger a drastic situation, do we need a fallback? Or do we say, no, it either works or it doesn't?
So I think there are, there was no fallback. It said QR only.
Yeah.
Because if they went to implement paper
Yeah.
and say, okay, if you don't have a QR, why don't you use paper? It would have been, it had been a mess, and everybody would have said, okay, I don't have a QR, I'll give you paper.
Right.
Right. So I think, things like this, I'm sure Sri Lanka has, example, as I said, the infrastructure, the platforms are fully ready to do this.
Okay.
Right. It's just that, it's even the financial institutions, they want to do more, but in this sort of business, it's very low margin. Right. But we have to have significant growth, significant transaction volume.
Right.
Just like in what happened in India.
Right. Your yield has to be much more.
Exactly. So otherwise, the institutions as well as all the platform companies don't want to invest money in it, because it's, you are investing, your return is very, very small.
Right.
So we have to have large amount of transactions going through, and the platforms and the systems are ready. Right. So I think that is the dilemma which is, why is it not going? Somebody will have another opinion about it, but I think overall, we are either some of the use cases which are happening now, which I'm sure will happen, by 2025, some of these at least. And other side is, if we have a drastic change or, a small change in the way we do things, I think, it will help.
I think that's the best way to go about, honestly. Yeah. I mean, by the looks of it, otherwise we will always be listening to somebody else's opinion and start working on somebody else's opinion. I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose if you say that everything almost is basically set to go, we need something to trigger for us to actually, get into digitalization. Randil, it's been fascinating, obviously, having a conversation with you, especially in the financial sector, which we all do actually perform our transactions. Sometimes I was actually, having conversations with friends, because honestly, I really can't remember the last time, I physically had to walk into a bank, because it's become so accessible in using everything that you have as far as the app is concerned. But you still have that crowd that still wants to walk into the bank, and I suppose it will phase out over the next couple of years. But as a final question to you, how do you see digital banking ecosystem evolving in Sri Lanka, maybe in the next decade or so? It looks like there are lots of things that are in the pipeline, but just needs to be activated, and will be a completely different sort of ecosystem, so to say.
Yeah. So I think decade is a very long time in terms of digital processes as at now.
Let's talk about 5 years.
Yeah. So I think I always believe that Sri Lanka's people are ready.
Right.
The ecosystems are not enabled, right? And also, example, the support for those ecosystems to grow is not there. Otherwise, the people are ready. Right. That is my view, at least, because, example, how many entrepreneurs are there who are only online?
Sure.
Content creators to people who are just uploading data on a day-to-day basis, even from the most rural areas in Sri Lanka.
Right.
So people are ready, right? But from a overall holistic view of within the next 5 years or so, where will Sri Lanka be? I think there are some other things that we didn't do purely because of the crisis that we were in.
Right.
Our focus changed completely to things that, apart from digitalization,
right.
all the core problems that we had, I think the focus changed there. But now I think with a little bit of relief, focus is changing back.
Okay.
Right. So, example, there are some of the initiatives like the digital currencies initiatives, the shared KYC initiatives, as well as there are some of example. Some of the global platforms are not enabled in Sri Lanka, right? It's not approved to be enabled in Sri Lanka, and nobody has taken the initiative to look at some of that as well
and push it
as well, because it was not our priority for the last 2.5-3 years.
Got it.
But I think within the next 5 years we might not be able to stop that as well. It'll come into Sri Lanka, and I think all of us have to be ready to embrace that
Right.
and enable that as well from financial institutions point of view. But also the other thing that is happening across the world is that the world is getting smaller, so which neobanks as well as different types of companies, different types of platforms are just going into countries and enabling things,
Right.
right? So I personally believe that there'll be a lot of partnerships which will happen in Sri Lanka especially with the tourism boom.
Okay.
Right. To sustain the tourism ecosystem, we will have to enable some of that.
That's right.
So I think within the next 5 years, it will be a fairly, if I may call it a kick time.
Nice.
Right. And it will automatically get driven because the people will want it.
Right.
Right. If somebody is not ready, even people will want it, and somebody will have to deliver.
That's right.
So I think that is where it is heading now, and I think the government as well as the regulators, our focus also has changed because the whole economic crisis, all the stuff, it's
And the demand has
yes,
basically changed
yes,
also.
of course, yes.
Brilliant. Randil, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and getting some insights as far as digital banking is concerned, where we are, where we're going. So exciting times.
Yes.
Exciting times.
I think so.
Very good. Thank you so much. Randil Boteju, of course, the Chief Digital Officer of Nations Trust Bank. On the show, it's Meet the Tech Titans, which is brought to you by Hutch. And of course, our venue partner is Liquid Spaces. Some great individuals, influential voices in the technological industry and the digital world in Sri Lanka, talking about where we are today, talking about where we should be and where we'll go, and hopefully where we will be in the next 5 to 10 years. We've got more coming up right here on Meet the Tech Titans, brought to you by Hutch. We're going to take a break and we shall see you in the next episode.